All right, welcome into 305 Guys at the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick. And at 5 Reasons Sports, make sure you hit like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Also, check out all the other content on the network. Of course, Inter Miami is imploding. Our Messi and Company group did an episode on that last night. There were 3 Canes episodes on here last night, baseball, basketball, and football, Vish, Jazz, and the rest of the group. So those are there as well. And of course, all the Heat coverage as we just try to get you to the draft at this point. And we're going to talk Panthers because that's what's going on right now. I forgot. Honestly, I literally forgot, Donno, before we get the sponsors. I forgot the Marlins are playing. I do this every May. Just forgot completely that they're playing. It's a sad situation.
We forget they're playing when they're a month and a half into the season. Like it's still, we already forget about them. But that's a yearly tradition.
I've gone to opening day the last 3 years and then promptly forgot that they were. I've gone and then promptly forgot they were playing. Okay, we're sponsored here by Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Put down your $5. You get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can play across the sports spectrum, up to 6 players together. Taco Tuesdays, Flex Fridays during the Stanley Cup and NBA Conference Finals. We're going to be doing daily shows. So David Eversole and I will be doing a show tonight. Get you ready for Panthers Hurricanes Game 1. And then also our NBA group will be doing shows to get you ready for, I guess the West starts first, right? So Minnesota playing tonight against Oklahoma City. So use the code 5FIVE, and that way you can play that all together. Get your $50 to play right away. Again, it's FIVE. All right, the Panthers open with the Hurricanes. They're back in Carolina. We were talking to our guy Alex Baumgartner before the show. We got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. Alex Baumgartner. You can follow him at A Baumgartner 91 and catch all of his copy from the series. He is doing a great job, obviously, chronicling this third straight Panther playoff run. And they've all been a little different, but they've all been a little bit the same. We were talking beforehand about they keep running into the same teams. Before we get to Carolina, because that's where we're going to go. Man, Toronto fans, and I know you have ties to that area. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like it. Like, I thought Yankee fans were bad. I thought Laker fans were bad. I've never seen fans who it just seems like they're actively rooting against their own players. Like the viciousness towards Marner. Somehow I ended up on an algorithm on 5 Reasons Sports Twitter. So literally all I'm getting is Maple Leafs content. And I mean, they had a great season. I understand that they've lost. I understand the 7 straight Game 7s. I get it. The choking, the being up against the Panthers. Looking back now, I should put everything I own on the Panthers to win that series based on Toronto's history. But like, I mean, isn't it a little much? Like, isn't it just a little much?
Look, I went to school in Toronto. I grew up going to Toronto. I have a lot of ties to that city, as you mentioned. It's very strongly hockey-rooted area. Over 100 years, the Leafs have been there. They haven't won a cup since 1967. This was the original 6. They were the last original 6 pre-expansion to win a cup. So it's been a long time for them waiting to get to the cup final. It's been over 20 years since they've made the conference final. I believe the last time they did was 0-2 against Paul Maurice's Carolina Hurricanes. So put that into perspective, how long it's been. One of the most talented teams on paper they've had. This core has been together a while. This is probably the deepest team they've had. They go to 7. And I think if they didn't get shelled in Game 5 and in Game 7, 6-1, I think if they didn't have a 2-0 series lead, maybe the reception would have been a little bit different. I was there for Game 5. They were booing by the end of the second period. Obviously, the fans are frustrated there. It seems like the players are frustrated with what's been happening. Other than that, I have no comment. I don't really. It was a tough scene in Game 7. You go up to a Game 7 after forcing it with a good Game 6 at home or on the road, and all of a sudden you're out of the game after 7 minutes of 3 straight goals by the Panthers. So yeah, it's a lot of tough decisions coming that way in Toronto, not just player wise, maybe a little bit higher in the management wise.
Before Alex said the one other thing on this, first thing, I love the fact that both Tkachuk and Marchand are like tweaking them. Like, totally. Like, and even Paul was kind of like, well, if it wasn't for the fans, it's sort of pitting on that. It almost seemed like a recruiting pitch from all 3 of them. But I have one more question before I get to Alex. Because you mentioned Maurice, okay? And I just have this question because he's now going to go against another team that he has ties to, obviously, right? I mean, see, Coach started off with the Hartford Whalers. I used to love that. They used to play in a mall. I actually went to a couple of games there. Carolina Hurricanes, obviously, for years, then Toronto, then back to Carolina for 4 years, long history. Then with the Winnipeg, never had won the big one, comes in here. Why do you think it's worked so well here? I mean, not that he was an unsuccessful coach in other places, but he accumulated a lot of losses. There were a lot of real disappointing failures. Why has he been perfect here?
Well, first of all, these last 2 years, I'll say, are the most talented teams Paul Maurice has ever had. If we just look at the roster construction, he hasn't had as talented of teams as they had in Florida. When in Toronto, after Game 5, I asked him in the presser, I know you won the Cup last year. I know you've had great groups before, but is this the deepest team that you've had? And he went back to something he said all season where he implied this because he says this a lot during the season that he doesn't run the bench. And I suggest everyone go watch the most recent Mic'd Up the Panthers release of Game 7. Maurice barely had to say anything on the bench. It was Marchand, it was Tkachuk, it was Bennett. These guys run the bench in Florida. And I thought Maurice was kind of lying about that. And boy, was I wrong, because these players really do run the bench. The players buy into a coach like that. He's a player's coach. It seems like he adapts with the times a little bit. He lets the players play their skill game, but it's the same thing every game. And when the Panthers are dumping the puck in, and obviously you've seen that clip where he says pound the F and D against Boston. So in Game 7, they have nothing left. That's exactly what they did against Toronto. The games Florida pounded the D. They were hunting Chris Tanev. They were hunting those Leafs D in the corner. That's how you win a Game 7 6-1. I think that's partially why it worked. And Bill Zito knew what he was getting. He went out, he hired Maurice. He basically got Maurice to come out of a semi-retirement, and he built the team to his liking. You got guys like Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov. You got big body players that really adapt to his type of style. Carter Verhaeghe's a sniper, and he's throwing more hits than goals he's scoring in this postseason. It's just everyone's buying into what Paul Maurice has. I think it goes top to bottom from the ownership down. But yeah, this is definitely the most talented team he's ever had.
I also think it's maybe the most clutch team in South Florida sports history, because these guys go into a Game 7, whether it's home or on the road, I trust them to win, Alex. And really another illustration as to how the Panthers and the Maple Leafs are just polar opposites, traditional hockey market versus warm weather market, so much toxicity and pressure up there in Toronto. And, there are a lot of Florida Panthers fans now that this sport has caught fire now in South Florida, but it's just so much more positive vibes from the fan base. And the team actually gets it done on the ice. For all the Game 7s that Toronto has lost in recent years, the Panthers keep winning Game 7 after Game 7. I mean, how have you gotten to that point where you trust this team to win elimination games, Game 7s, and what's the secret to them being so clutch?
Well, I think it's just being there before. I'm the biggest believer, and I've come on this show or your other shows in the past where I say you got to lose before you can win. And when I say lose before you can win, I'm not talking about losing in the first round or losing before the playoffs. I mean, going on deep runs, losing in the Cup final, knowing what it takes to get there, knowing what happens. And how Florida learned so much from getting pumped by Vegas in that series that they basically reconstructed how they look at their bottom six, specifically their fourth line. And that's why the last 2 years, they've been adding players at the deadline or adding players in free agency where we can basically, the top 9 doesn't move in Florida. I know they added Marchand at the deadline. I know they added Tarasenko last year. That's a plug and play type of player. When you got 1 to 2 future Hall of Famers coming in the lineup. But when we look at how they've constructed the fourth line the last 2 postseasons compared to when they kind of went on a miracle run to get to the final against Vegas, they learned, they knew what they had to do. Everyone bought into that system. They have experience. They know what it takes to win. They know what happens when you lose. I think that's the biggest change about what the Panthers have done the last few years. I mean, I started covering this team 5 seasons ago. Quenneville was still the coach. They went into that series against Tampa and they lost in 6th, and they got swept the next year in the second round. They probably shouldn't even have won that first round series against Washington. They've learned how to adjust. This core's been together for a lot longer than people give them credit for. It's 5 years pretty much with almost all the same players Sam Reinhart came in 1 year after that first year. I mean, we've seen it with Tampa. We saw it with those Bruins teams, with those Hawks teams, the Kings teams. It's a lot of the same players. And Tampa lost a lot before they could win. They lost in the Cup final. They lost in the conference final. I mean, it's kind of the same path. And I know that the Panthers have made 3 straight conference finals. They made the Cup twice. There's a good chance they can get back if they get through Carolina, obviously. This is a very, very scary group. And the rest of the NHL has been trying to replicate it. And a lot of the teams of the East just haven't been able to find the answer to the Panthers.
All right, before we pivot, and we'll get to the ad right after this, before we pivot to Carolina, and we'll go from there. I grew up in Long Island with the Islanders teams. I lived in the same general area as most of them, 80 to 84. I had the Conn Smythe in my house because Quit Scoring went on vacation. And I followed those teams really, really closely. I mean, I'll never forgive my brother because we had a choice in 80 of going to the circus at MSG or going to see the Islanders try to close out the Flyers, and it was his turn. So I watched as a kid Tonelli to Nystrom to finish that off from a bar at Madison Square Garden. This team is the first team in my lifetime that reminds me of those Islander teams, and it's because of what you said. And I know that was the time before free agency and all that, but it's just they had a core. Like, it was just, and they had a core, and they did not panic. It was Bossy, it was Trottier, it was Gillies, it was Nystrom, it was the Sutter brothers. Most of them ended up in South Florida at some point. It was Billy Smith, the old goalie, kind of like Bob. They're kind of built that way in a lot of ways. And again, like you said, they don't panic. And it seems like Zito has a template now. It's sort of like you said, the top lines, he's going to re-sign guys if he can. We'll get to Ekblad and Bennett and what happens with them in the offseason, obviously, and Marchand. But he has a template, and it's like, okay, go get the 1 or 2 guys with experience to still give us something to get us through this run. And that's why, Alex, I was so confused when the Seth Jones trade was made, that you've got Panther fans on there who've seen Zito do this over and over and over. And I know most of the criticism was coming from Chicago fans who said that Seth Jones wasn't very good. He was overrated. He wasn't good in that system. But even to have Panther fans doubt him at this point, I guess I don't get it. Because you could argue 2 of the 4 or 5 best players in that last series were Marchand and Seth Jones, right? Is that pretty? Tkachuk was not good. Tkachuk does not look anywhere near healthy. Even the metrics on him had him as their worst forward during that period of time, and it didn't matter. Are we getting to a point where just whatever Zito does is don't even question it at this stage?
I'll give you 2 answers to this. First of all, Seth Jones, I think, was one of the 2 best players in that Tampa series, and then obviously one of the 5 best players in that Toronto series. I don't think they're here without Seth Jones. 20 games without Ekblad in the regular season, a couple suspensions in the playoffs for 18 games regular season, a couple suspensions for Ekblad in both rounds. I mean, another right-handed defenseman. He eats a lot of minutes. He's a big boy. He has unbelievable hockey IQ, smarter than I even expected. I knew he was a highly touted prospect coming in. I remember that draft. I think I was 12 years old when it was Barkov over Jones, and people were losing their minds about it. But let's go back to that Jonah Gadjevich goal where everyone thought it was offside. The puck's in the zone. Gadjevich hasn't tagged up yet. Seth Jones slowed down his stride, dragged the leg, and then didn't touch the puck. That allowed Gadjevich to tag up. So he waited for that player to tag up. This is all at full speed before he went and grabbed the puck. That's the only reason why that goal counted. He's been a fantastic player. He's really solidified this blue line. Now, why people were overreacting, obviously, there was a lot of emotion tied to Spencer Knight. Spencer's one of the nicest guys I've ever covered. Met a lot of players over the last 5 years. He's one of the, not few, but one of the guys that I can recall coming up to me a couple times and just, chopping it up. Even after they won the Stanley Cup final on the ice, he came up to me and said a couple nice words. So, obviously, I understand the emotional aspect of Spencer Knight getting traded. Obviously, if we remember a couple years ago, they made the swing to get Ben Sherratt, and they gave up a first-round pick, and that didn't end well at all, and a lot of people were tying this Jones move to what happened with Ben Sherratt. Ben Sherratt was never the player Seth Jones was, and Seth Jones is the perfect player for this system, and I think that's why it's worked so well. So that's probably why there were some reactions. Obviously, when Bob had a shaky game here or there, people were kind of on edge about not having Spencer Knight. But the goalie excellence department's been very good with the Panthers. You can find a goaltender here and there. Obviously, Bob still is playing at a high level, so it's win now, worry later for the Panthers. That's why they've traded so many first-round picks. That's why Anton Lundell is still somehow the youngest guy in the lineup, and he's been on the team for 4 years. There's no panic with the group, and they like who they have.
I'm going to let Alex take over from here. Just want to mention the sponsor before we go. All Pro Construction Builders. You can find them at All Pro Construction Builders, allproconstructionbuilders.com in South Florida. Well, we don't have to worry about state tax like they do, or any. Well, we don't have, not the tax they have in Toronto, that's for sure. Don't have to worry about the cold weather. You do have to worry about hurricanes. So check it out. It's All Pro Construction Builders, allproconstructionbuilders.com. Reach out to Danny and his team. Not only you get a free estimate, you get 5.5% off your entire order if you mention 305 guys, 5 on the floor, or 5 Reasons Sports. We got to get a Panthers backdrop for this. Give them a call at 305-484-4429. All right, Alex, you're up.
Well, yeah, and you talk about having to worry about hurricanes down here in South Florida. That's obviously the case in Carolina as well. And the Panthers will meet a team called the Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Finals. A team, Alex, that met in the playoffs same round a couple of years ago, and the Panthers swept the series. There were some overtime games in there, so it wasn't as easy as the sweep sounds. So how do you handicap it this time around? Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, big keys for you for the Cats.
2 years ago, obviously, it was a sweep, but back-to-back overtimes to rip off the series. Yeah. We remember that Tkachuk goal with a couple seconds left in Game 4. These were all one-goal games. I know people kind of joke about Rod Brind'Amour saying after the game, you're going to say we got swept. We didn't get swept. Yes, they got swept, but I do know where he was coming from. These were all one-goal games, overtimes. Carolina did carry the play a lot of those games in the first couple minutes if we go back to that series 2 years ago. A lot of the same players for Carolina, obviously a little bit of movement. They made a trade to get Mikko Rantanen, and now he's in Dallas, and he's tearing it up. I do like some of the pieces they got back, but they're a great team. Jacob Slavin's one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL. I feel like the way we rate Gustav Forsling down here, I hold Jacob Slavin in the same regard. He was fantastic in the Four Nations. He's been fantastic for the Canes. He's a legit number one defenseman in the league. And it's not that he's going to put a bunch of goals in the back of the net because Forsling doesn't, specifically this playoff. But, man, that's the last guy you want to be coming down on a one-on-one. Slavin's fantastic. Svechnikov's really turned it up this postseason, a former number 2 overall pick. Still only 24. Yes, Sebastian Aho. It's a very well-built team. Carolina has won a few series in the years past. They always seem to be in the Final 8, Final 4. But they're another team that's looking to kind of get over the edge. I know we talk about Toronto a lot, but Carolina is a team that's looking to make that next jump. And obviously they have a lot to play for here because Florida got them 2 years ago. They had a disappointing run last year. So and obviously the Paul Maurice, Rod Brind'Amour ties. Brind'Amour used to play for Paul Maurice. He was his captain. There's a lot of storylines that we're not talking about in this series, and it should be interesting. And I think it's going to be, as difficult as the last series was for the Panthers.
All right, let's go to it then. Predictions before we close. I have Panthers in 6. I wouldn't be surprised if they fall behind in the series. I don't think it matters. I think if you get some improved health from Tkachuk, like you mentioned, Verhaeghe's not scoring right now. I feel like maybe more of an impact from him. The third line has been unbelievable. Really, just unbelievable. All 3 of them have been terrific. I mean, he may be their best player. So over the last round, I mean, you look at the plus minus when he's out there, he's been tremendous. And obviously, Bob has picked up his play quite a bit. Thing is not getting mentioned a lot too. As bad as Toronto was, and they got blown out 6-1. They didn't have any shots for the first 10 minutes, and then they had 3 really good chances, and he shut those down. And then from there, it was curtains. I'm going to say Panthers in 6. Donno, what you got?
I'm going to, I hate to do this again, but I don't know. There's something about this team winning Game 7s on the road. I don't fear it, and that's what it would take this time around again. Although I don't think Carolina are as much choke artists as Toronto are, because they don't deal with that same toxicity in their building. But I'm going to go another close series, another game 7 on the road where we all doubt ourselves and each other before the game starts, and then the Cats get it done. So I'm going to go Panthers in 7. What about you, other Alex?
All right. So every time I'm on this show, you guys know I refuse to give predictions because 2 years ago,
we still ask you.
Listen, 2 years ago,
I know.
I didn't give any predictions for the first 3 rounds. Then I said Florida was going to beat Vegas. They got shelled. Never did a prediction last year. They won the cup. Didn't make a prediction for the first 2 rounds. They're still here. Not making a prediction for this series, but I'm taking Carolina tonight in game 1 because of the quick turnaround, less than 48 hours. Maybe I'm anti-mushing the Canes, but wouldn't be surprised if Hurricanes pull this one out tonight.
Yeah, the turnaround is quick. Like Ethan, I feel like if this was the NBA, thered be like a week between games. Like this so quick in hockey, this turnaround.
Yeah, no, in the NBA they coddle them. We know that. Well, here's first thing. Well, one thing, just so people know, Alex is going to be Baumgartner is going to be at games 3 and 4 here, game 5 in Carolina. But I do want to call you on one thing. You did make a prediction, and when this series is over, we will blast out that prediction, but I'm not going to jinx it, so everybody's going to forget that prediction. We appreciate it. Follow him at Baumgartner91. He'll have copy on 5reasonsports.com later today. Donno and I will be back on Thursday. Probably talk more Panthers at that time, and maybe NBA playoffs as well, with that going on too. Thanks to our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders, Prize Picks. Use the code FIVE. Make sure you subscribe.